Alright, I'm back. Nothing like the router crashing out on you. Second. Chat set back up. Bump, bump, bump. There we go. Yeah, my router crashed out on me. Sorry about that, everybody. I had to restart the router, computer, all my yards. But I am back. I wondered if we start back there. Oh, it's not getting hot back here. Cut it out. Shit. Big fibber. I opened that door and I instantly feel the cold difference. That it's colder in there. I'm just like, you fibber. I've got the heater on here because I cold. You like cold, buddy. All right. There shouldn't be anything you have access connecting to.
A lot of the ways we do it, it's law enforcement central. I'm not sure that all that we do, but whether through social media, through the activities. There is nothing new.
Old
about
Mage Guy is now live. Streaming politics. Morning news with OMG.
Up to and during World War II, fascist leaders in Europe targeted Jews, Roma, people, and other groups as sources of social pollution.
YouTube. Hinson Jackson.
Beyond human, while describing themselves as noble and decent, embodying a pure, uncorrupted nation.
Yeah. Router decided it was going. I'm gonna be retarded. Ha 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 ha. Awkward. So, we're back.
Trump and Elon Musk are obsessed with eugenics. In 1920, well before the German Nazi Party came to power in 1933, its platform declared that only someone of German blood, regardless of faith, can be a citizen. The Third Reich's demonizing language against Jews and other marginalized.
You switch over to the RV park Wi-Fi. No. We want to use our Wi-Fi. It's stronger, more gooder.
Demonizing language against Jews and other marginalized groups helped create its culture and justify its mass killings. Nazis consequently assumed the mantle of liberators as they killed those whom they saw as corrupting the pure race in accordance with ideas of racial hygiene. Their hateful language was not limited to Europe. Fritz Kuhn, a German Nazi activist, served in the late 1930s and early 40s as leader of the German-American Bund, an organization of ethnic Germans and Nazi sympathizers living in the US. He addressed a Nazi rally in Madison Square Garden in New York City in 1939. On Sunday, October 27, 2024, Donald Trump gave a hate-filled speech at a MAGA campaign rally on the same site of Madison Square Garden, New York City, where he claimed that the day I take the oath of office, the migrant invasion of our country ends and the restoration of our country begins. The restoration of Trump's so-called white superior race. As Trump, like Putin, favors just one race of Americans. That's the endgame. These are the warnings.
And the entire idea of Christian civilization that led to the founding of the United States of America, that was formed in Europe. The cultural bonds, the religious bonds, these things are going to last beyond political disagreements. But I think that Europe, and frankly I would have said this about America a year ago, but Europe is at risk, I think, of creating, of engaging in civilizational suicide.
I'm Anthony Davis. You can find me on the 5 Minute News YouTube channel, podcast, on Wednesdays.
If there is any reason you need to hear this, anyone whatsoever, America was not a Christian foundation. As a matter of fact, America was founded because people wanted to have a choice in religion. That's where originally, over in the UK, there was a singular country religion. To ignore that fact is foolish.
Hey guys, it's John Ossoff. I just got back to Georgia from Washington, where President Trump is trying to...
Well, using an apt analogy from sports, a litigation hearing broke out during a fight last night. That's the only way I can describe what happened with the Trump administration escalating its assault and open defiance of federal judge orders, the federal courts themselves, during a hearing in front of the chief judge of the District Court for D.C., Jeb Boasberg. The hearing was supposed to be about whether the Trump administration had violated a temporary restraining order issued by the judge to stop the continued deportation of people subject to a last-minute secret proclamation of Donald Trump, which he made public only on Saturday, trying to invoke war powers and a phony war to use the Alien Enemies Act to deport people as young as 14 years old and purported gang members and send them to a notorious barbaric supermax prison in El Salvador. Appeared to everyone who watched, including the judge, that it violated the judge's orders, which he issued late on Saturday evening in court with the lawyers present, that planes should not take off as of the time of his order, that everyone in the Trump administration, in the relevant departments and agencies need to know about his order, and if planes were in the air, they needed to turn immediately around. That did not happen, and when you hear what the Trump administration's excuse was, you'll understand why the judge was so upset and started to push back hard against the Trump administration. I'm Michael Popok. You're on the Midas Touch Network and Legal AF. This is a fast-moving story, all breaking since Saturday. This may well be the constitutional crisis that we were expecting to have. Donald Trump drawing a line in the sand and deciding that this is the thing he's going to use to test the outer boundaries of his power and beyond. Jeb Boasberg called the hearing together after a series of filings, one by the American Civil Liberties Union, who filed the case in anticipation of Donald Trump trying to use the Alien Enemies Act to deport people, to turbocharge his deportation plan. They filed a lawsuit. The judge entered a temporary restraining order that initially applied to 6 Venezuelans. Then the judge got word through the ACLU that Donald Trump had actually signed, apparently, on Friday, the Alien Enemies Act proclamation declaring himself to be the commander-in-chief during a phony war. The judge then expanded his temporary restraining order during a hearing to include all people affected by the proclamation.
Will wait. Dude, get some fucking muffler on your Jeep or something. Seriously, that's ridiculous. I am so tempted to get a Hot Wheel and leave it on the fucking Jeep.
So he did what we call, he certified temporarily at least a class of people. He then entered an injunction on top of that class, and he expected, as any federal judge would, that the Trump administration would abide by it. Apparently, there was at least one, if not two planes that took off after the judge entered the oral order, and then later followed it up with what we call a minute order, which is an entry on the docket. But let's be clear, I've been doing this for over 35 years. A judge looks you in the eye during a full 2-hour hearing, and at the end of the hearing issues an injunction. That injunction is an injunction, oral, verbal, until it's memorialized. When it's memorialized, when you see the actual written order, which is only a minute order, because we're moving quick here, so the judge just had time to do a slight entry. I'll put the entry up in the video here. From there, you await the judge's written order, but if there's no written order, then you were there. The transcript, which gets filed on the docket, which is the actual, what the court reporter takes down as everything that happened during the hearing, that informs you as the lawyers and the parties as to what the injunction is. The Trump administration tried three ways to ignore and defy this federal judge. First, they ran to the Court of Appeals, the D.C. Court of Appeals, and for the D.C. Circuit, and made a request by letter that the judge be removed from the case because the Trump administration doesn't like the fact that he's asking hard questions about when planes took off and where they landed and why they violated the judge's order. So the ensign for the Department of Justice filed a 2-page letter with the clerk in which they asked ultimately for the removal, claiming that Trump had some sort of core Article 2 authority not described that would remove the jurisdiction of the federal judge. In other words, they don't recognize the jurisdiction of the federal judge, even though the federal judge, the job of a judge is to interpret the Constitution and other laws and determine whether the executive branch has violated those aspects. That's what a federal judge does. So they ask on page 2 of the letter, this court should also immediately reassign this case to another district court judge, given the highly unusual and improper procedures used that have been employed by the judge. The district court did not make a move on that. And just so you know, Jeff Boasberg is eminently qualified as a judge. He was appointed to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, the FISA court, by Chief Justice Roberts, served there valiantly for 5 years. He was even part of the court about enemy combatants and aliens being deported. So he has experience there. He has a top security clearance. He handles in D.C. and as the chief judge classified documents and information all of the time. And so they attack him for his procedure, right? Which is, and as a person, that fails. They then send a letter, a response to the judge, telling the judge, okay, we can't get rid of you. You have no jurisdiction because we have all the Article 2 power in this unitary president model, and you don't have any power. You're just a single federal judge. This is their mantra now. Single federal judge in a single city, and you can't conduct war power, or executive power. That's not what the judge is doing. What the judge is doing their job in the co-equal branches and checks and balance system of our constitutional republic. That's what's going on. And so they filed this motion to vacate the hearing. You can't even hear any of this, Judge. it's above your pay grade, effectively. And the judge have said denied. We'll see you in court, which led us to this hearing that I'm now reporting on. During the hearing, the judge put all of the lawyers from the Department of Justice their feet to the fire, but particularly the lawyer they chose to argue this. His name is Abhishek Kambli. Used to work as a lawyer for the Air Force. I'm sure he knows a thing or two about flights and planes, and then worked his way up, apparently, and is now Deputy Attorney General in the Department of Justice, having worked in Indianapolis. Let me just put, he took on some fire from the judge. The judge says, apparently, my oral rulings don't seem to carry much weight with you. And because they have this whole argument, which is ridiculous, that until it was memorialized in the minute order, which is a 2-line order, they didn't have to comply with the judge's order orally given, and they could ignore it. And then they pointed to the fact, Judge, your written order doesn't talk about turning around planes, to which the judge said in the transcript, apparently, the transcript of what happened, and you were there, sir, demonstrates what my ruling was and the basis for it and the parameters and contours of it. So if you had any question, you pull the transcript and you read it. I can't tell you how many times in my career we've ordered the transcript from a hearing so that we fully understood the judge's rulings. You can't rely on a placeholder, minute order, placed for 2 lines.
I'm sorry, I'm not a lawyer, and I would be more apt to listening to the judge's verbal ruling, which is on the transcript, and pull up the transcript. Because that's what is known to be the dead set to rights what's what. And the only way stuff gets pulled off the transcript is if the judge says to pull it off. As far as I'm aware, there might be a few other cases, and I will eat my words if that's the case. I'm not all-knowing, not by a long shot. But it'd still go for the transcript. The amendment note, or addendum note, which is basically what I would call it. That's not. Mm-hmm.
It's on the docket as your injunction. If you're the party being enjoined, right? That is beyond a ridiculous and nonsensical position to be taken by the Trump administration, but that's what they do. Did you know the liver is the second largest organ in your body? It's responsible for over 500 functions. But for some reason, liver health doesn't always get the attention it deserves. Over 30% of Americans have a sluggish liver, a problem that often goes undetected until the very last minute. Dose is on a mission to educate us all on why it's so important to maintain your liver health, and has created an incredible product to help you do just that. I mean, I found a clinically supported, potent, and effective solution, and I can't wait to share it with you. Dose for Your Liver was formulated to cleanse your liver of unwanted elements, aid digestion. I mean, it acts as your body's filter, flushing out unwanted elements and breaking down what you consume into essential nutrients. The liver produces and regulates cholesterol, stores vitamins and minerals, and impacts digestive and metabolic health, among many others.
I didn't believe it until I tried it myself, but if you download the AliExpress app through this video, you can make 83 items that you want for a total of 99 cents, and shipping is completely free.
And impacts digestive and metabolic health, among many other things. Dose's science-backed formula promotes liver function, aids digestion, eases bloating, and even boosts energy levels. In a double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical trial, Dose for Your Liver lowered liver enzyme levels by 50% in over 86% of participants. Stick with Dose and feel the incredible benefits over time. More energy, better digestion, reduced bloating, healthier liver enzyme function, reduction in brain fog, and better sleep. One Dose for Your Liver shot is equivalent to 17 shots of turmeric juice. Dose is gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, and vegan. Save 30% on your first month of subscription by going to dosedaily.co/legalaf or entering legalaf at checkout. That's DOSEDAILY.co/legalaf for 30% off your first month subscription.
Ow!
So the judge says, no. You get the transcript, you read the transcript. I ordered you to inform all relevant departments, turn those planes around, and apparently you didn't. Now tell me why you didn't give me the timeline. They refused, right? The same guy, Deputy Attorney General Camley, refused to respond to these questions. I'm not at liberty, Your Honor. I'm not at liberty to anything more than we wrote in our two-page paper, and effectively telling the judge, you're not worthy of this information. It's classified. And the judge says, I have top secret security clearance. We can't tell you. That's not the showing that you need to make in my courtroom under federal law about why you can't tell me. So it's not about whether they can tell him. It's about whether it ultimately goes on the public docket for you and me to see.
Yeah.
The judge can look at it with a level of classification as a federal judge. And all the time. They do it what's called in camera, which means they look at documents secretly off the docket. They turn off the microphone so the press can't report on it. They look at the documents. They have discussions in chambers, which is where the judge hangs out when he's not on the court, on the bench. And they have that discussion. And then he decides how much, if any, of that ends up on the public docket after a round of briefing. That's all he's trying to do. But they refuse to answer even his questions. This is the open defiance of the federal judiciary and the rule of law that we've now seen, right? This is about the third example of at least federal judges calling out the Trump administration for refusing to testify in court, refusing to provide an affidavit, deporting somebody when they were ordered not to be deported. That just happened up in Boston, Massachusetts, right? Not stopping Elon Musk from going through servers and financial information, medical information, and the rest. Not rehiring people that have been ordered. This is where we are.
Find me in other places, Discord, Twitter, YouTube, Steam, Xbox, PlayStation, Old Mage Guide, and TikTok.
On this case that we're going to be following closely here on Midas Touch and on Legal AF. First, on what is effectively a contempt hearing about whether the Trump administration willfully violated the court's oral order, and what was discussed during the hearing as reflected in the transcript, yes or no. The judge is going to have to get the timeline on that. So he's ordered the Trump administration noon today, Tuesday, to supply a declaration under oath, sworn statement under oath, providing two things. One, what are the logistics of the planes, and demonstrate for me with my oral order, don't rely on my written two-line order, explain to me how you didn't violate the oral order. Secondly, tell me how the planes logistically took off. And if you're not going to tell me that, if you're going to claim some sort of executive privilege, then you need to make a better showing, as required by the law in your briefing. I expect that by noon as well. Separately from that, because there was a couple of clocks running here at the same time, the Trump administration just filed their motion to vacate the original temporary restraining order, because that was due on Monday as well. So that just came in. I'll do a separate hot take about that. But their fundamental argument there is the court doesn't have jurisdiction to hear this matter. The executive branch lords supreme over the Article 3 branch, and that the judge was wrong, and this one you've heard before, the judge was wrong to enter a quote-unquote universal injunction because he doesn't have the power to do that. That's that single federal judge in a single district argument you keep hearing from the influencers hired by the Trump administration, the MAGA senators and congresspeople, Carolyn Levitt, the press secretary, and the rest. Right on cue, they push a button, and this echo chamber starts.
You see it.
Now, one little side note before I get to my hot take on that a little bit later today. This isn't a universal injunction. This is a class action, which was certified for now by a judge, joining together everyone adversely affected by the phony proclamation on the Alien Enemies Act, and then a injunction related to that class. That's different than a universal injunction. I'll explain more a little bit later. Now look, let me just end the hot take this way. We're going to get a filing at noon. They're going to continue to try to bang away at the circuit court, the federal circuit court for appeal about getting the judge
So we have
removed,
that
about
yeah.
trying to
That's East Coast time.
stay this injunction while they move to dissolve it. That's the term in the trial court level. While they try eventually the Hail Mary pass the United States Supreme Court, which I think is all going to have the United States Supreme Court involvement as early as the end of this week or beginning of next week. That's as early as that could happen. Keep that on your calendar, on your radar, and we'll follow it here. The Alien Enemies Act is not a war power. It is not something that a commander-in-chief necessarily using his powers implements. And there's no war been declared, which is the fundamental basis of using the Alien Enemies Act. Sure, if there's an imminent threat of an invasion or an incursion, until Congress can get its act together, the courts have seen, and the Constitution says that the president has certain responsibilities and duties. But where's the war? This slow creeping 10-year thing where drug gangs have been invading America? That's the imminent threat. I mean, even the Supreme Court should see through that. So we're not at war. We're not at war with Venezuela. We're not at war with the Maduro regime in Venezuela.
We're not at war with Mexico.
And sending people without due process to horrible supermax prisons in El Salvador to satisfy the desires of the quote-unquote philosopher king, President Bukele, in El Salvador, is beyond corrupt and beyond unconstitutional. And we have to ask ourselves, what is the country that we are living in, that we woke up in? Is this who it is to be an American? I'm sure many of the people who were deported, these 250 people that were put on the flights in violation of the court order, I'm sure many of them may ultimately prove to be just as terrible and just as violent and just as criminal as the Trump administration makes out. And if that's the case, then they should have no problem going through the proper constitutional method to try them, deport them, and send them where they like. I just don't think it's El Salvador. And I certainly don't think it's doing it with some jokey social media, all apparently approved by lawyers, where they're doing closing time videos, and then getting off the plane, Border Patrol taking them home, look it up, you have that BS going on, you got Kelly going boo-hoo in a social media post. Apparently this is all approved by lawyers in the Trump administration who coordinated their messaging. And the brains of this operation, and I use that term lightly, is apparently Stephen Miller, as I predicted, who is the deputy White House chief of staff, used to be in the first Trump administration. He's the non-lawyer that came up with all the legal strategies about separating families and putting kids in cages. Stephen Miller and Kristi Noem, the puppy killer, who's our head of Homeland Security. Apparently they came up with this idea to use the Alien Enemies Act and these planes, violate the court order, and then try to fix it on appeal. If you don't like the federal judge's trial judge
Vincent
order,
Jackson. Have you
then
ever heard the
appeal,
FET song by
defy.
YG?
You appeal,
Check it out.
don't defy.
FDT. Oh, I think so.
That's the society
I'll check it out anyhow,
the
though.
constitutional republic that we live in. And just to wrap it this way, every major constitutional issue that's ever been litigated up to the United States Supreme Court came out of a one single judge, single district ruling on a constitutional matter about the president's powers or about the Constitution that ultimately went up to a 3-judge panel of a federal district court, federal appellate court, and then up to the United States Supreme Court. That is our method. That is our logistics, period. And Donald Trump trying to break all these norms and argue that federal judges don't have the power. Only he possesses all of the unitary powers. He tries to divide and conquer. Needs to get shot down immediately by the United States Supreme Court. It certainly will at the intermediary appellate court level, and we'll continue to follow it right here. Until then, I'm Michael Popok. In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and
was flying combat missions over Iraq in 1991, I didn't think there was like some snotty-nosed teenager in South Africa that one day was going to call me a traitor. So I was kind of shocked. But in the regard to like the world on Twitter, it's his platform. He can call me whatever he wants. I don't take him very seriously with that, with the names he's going to throw at me. What I really care about is the stuff he's doing. Yeah. He and Donald Trump are doing significant damage to. I'll tell you, Brian, when I was flying combat missions over Iraq in 1991, I didn't think there was like some snotty-nosed teenager in South Africa that one day was going to.
And that's all that happened. Because he's coming over here. Hey ho. Shall we talk with the news a little bit, Ellie? Yes, I'm moving your feet from your toes. No, I'm not gonna give you none. I'm gonna give you some kisses and cuddles and shit. Well, that other thing you asked for ain't gonna happen, little girl. Alright. You don't say. Guess I'll be back from midday chill here in just a little bit. I think I'm gonna take a little bit of time between streams now. Half hour. So I'll be back in a little bit. Don't know exactly how long, but it shouldn't be too long, honestly. See you guys in a bit.